He's one of the most powerful men alive today. Yet many outside of China know surprisingly little about him. Xi Jinping, the President of the People's Republic of China, General Secretary of the Communist Party, and commander of a nation that has risen to global prominence under his watch. Over the past decade, Xi has reshaped modern China, not just politically, but economically, militarily, and ideologically. Under his leadership, the country has transformed from a manufacturing powerhouse to a geopolitical force rivaling the United States. We'll cover his early life in the shadow of Mao's China, his long climb through the Communist Party's ranks, and how he emerged as the most dominant Chinese leader in decades. Xi Jinping didn't appear overnight. He is the product of a complex political legacy, beginning with China's post-Mao reforms. As China opened up, modernized, and entered the global economy, a new generation of leaders emerged, pragmatic, calculated, and loyal to the party. Xi was one of them, but with a vision all his own. When Xi took office in 2012, the world was watching a rising China. But few predicted how dramatically things would shift under his rule. Sweeping anti-corruption campaigns, constitutional reforms, mass surveillance, and unprecedented centralization of power. Who is Xi Jinping? What drives him? And what does his vision mean for China and the rest of the world? To understand Xi Jinping, we must first understand the world he was born into and the family that shaped him. Born in June 1953, Xi is the son of Xi Jinping, a revolutionary hero and one of the founding members of the Chinese Communist Party. Xi Jinping was close to Mao, but also suffered deeply from the political purges that defined the early decades of Communist China. His rise and fall left a lasting mark on his son. At first, the Xi family enjoyed elite status, but that changed dramatically during the Cultural Revolution. In 1966, Mao Zedong launched a decade-long political campaign to reassert control, the Cultural Revolution. Xi Jinping was purged. The family was denounced. Xi Jinping, just 13 years old, went from being a privileged princeling to a political outcast. Xi spent 7 years here. He dug ditches, carried manure, and slept on a brick bed. He once said, "The cave was my first classroom." Those years hardened him. He learned to survive. He also began to understand the language of the common people, a skill that would serve him well later in politics. Xi Jinping applied to join the Communist Party multiple times. He was rejected again and again, his father's disgrace hanging over him like a shadow. But he persisted. Eventually, he was accepted. The hardship of Liang Jiahe didn't break him. It molded him. Unlike other princelings who rebelled against the party, Xi embraced it. He began to see the party not just as a political vehicle, but as a shield, a source of meaning, and a path back to power. In his speeches, Xi often reflects on these formative years. He frames them as proof of his endurance, resilience, and understanding of China's grassroots. As China transitioned away from Mao's chaos and toward reform under Deng Xiaoping, Xi Jinping emerged from the margins. He had paid his dues, and now he was ready to climb. From the shadows of a disgraced family to the halls of provincial power, Xi Jinping's political journey is one of patience, loyalty, and carefully cultivated connections. The late 1970s and early 1980s marked a turning point for China. Deng Xiaoping had taken over from Mao and launched sweeping reforms that opened China to the world. It was the beginning of a new political era, and for young cadres like Xi Jinping, a time of opportunity. Xi began his career in the early 1980s as a personal secretary to Geng Biao, a top military figure. This gave him a window into central military and political affairs, even while he served in regional roles. Xi spent 17 years in Fujian, rising from deputy mayor to governor. Here, he focused on economic development, cross-strait relations with Taiwan, and building a reputation as a capable, clean, and disciplined official. Xi's style was cautious, deliberate, and pragmatic. He rarely made bold ideological statements. Instead, he built credibility by appearing competent, loyal, and incorruptible, key qualities valued by the party elite. In 2002, Xi was transferred to Zhejiang, one of China's most economically dynamic provinces. Here, he embraced private enterprise and innovation, while maintaining strong party discipline. In 2007, Xi was sent to Shanghai after a major corruption scandal toppled the city's previous party secretary, Chen Liangyu. Xi's appointment was no coincidence. It was a stress test by the party's leadership. He spent just 7 months in Shanghai, but his steady hand, lack of political baggage, and reputation for discipline won over the central leadership. Xi's rise wasn't just about competence. It was also about guanxi, the Chinese term for personal networks and relationships. Xi carefully navigated rival party factions, building bridges while avoiding entanglements. In October 2007, Xi Jinping was appointed to the Politburo Standing Committee, China's highest decision-making body. He was also named vice president. Within 5 years, he would become the supreme leader of China. By the time many observers took notice, Xi Jinping was already in position, a leader molded by the party, hardened by personal history, and committed to reshaping China's future. But once in power, Xi did something few expected. He didn't just govern, he transformed the system around himself. Coming up next, Xi's sweeping consolidation of power, and how he became China's most dominant leader since Mao. In November 2012, the Chinese Communist Party made a historic choice. After months of quiet deliberation, compromise, and internal debate, Xi Jinping was named General Secretary of the Communist Party, the de facto top leader of China. Xi was widely seen as a compromise candidate, someone palatable to rival factions. Jiang Zemin's powerful Shanghai gang supported him. Hu Jintao's Communist Youth League didn't oppose him. He seemed moderate, reliable, and cautious. Almost immediately after taking office, Xi launched a massive anti-corruption campaign, the largest in the party's modern history. He vowed to go after both tigers and flies, high-level officials and petty bureaucrats alike. Over 2 million officials were investigated. Dozens of top military generals, ministers, and party bosses were purged. Many belonged to rival factions. Some were rising stars tipped for future leadership. As rivals fell, Xi began restructuring the entire governance system. He positioned himself as the head of nearly every major policy group, from military reform to cybersecurity to foreign affairs. In 2018, the Chinese constitution was amended. Term limits for the presidency, in place since the 1980s, were abolished. Xi could now rule indefinitely. To legitimize his power, Xi developed his own political doctrine. Xi Jinping thought on socialism, with Chinese characteristics for a new era. It was written into the party's constitution, a symbolic elevation once reserved for Mao. The party became inseparable from the state, and Xi became inseparable from the party. This wasn't just rhetoric. Under Xi, party committees were embedded in companies, public discourse was tightly controlled, and political loyalty became a central requirement across sectors. In 2016, the party officially designated Xi Jinping as the core of the leadership, a title previously reserved for only Mao, Deng, and Jiang. It was a symbolic declaration. Xi was not just the leader of China. He was China. What followed was not just a change in leadership style. It was a fundamental shift in how China governed, how it projected itself globally, and how it envisioned its future. The era of Xi Jinping had fully begun. As Xi Jinping consolidated power at the top, he turned his gaze inward to reshape China itself. The goal, a strong, unified, obedient society that could endure long into the future. China's economic model was already shifting before Xi took power. But under his leadership, the shift accelerated, with an emphasis on state control, technological development, and common prosperity. Private companies were encouraged to grow, but never to challenge the state. In high-profile moves, the government reined in tech billionaires, paused IPOs, and placed party committees inside corporations. Xi also launched nationwide poverty eradication programs, claiming in 2020 that extreme poverty had been eliminated, a milestone in the party's legitimacy campaign. Campaigns against celebrity culture, gaming addiction, and effeminate male influencers were all part of a broader goal: to produce a disciplined, productive, nationalistic citizenry. School curriculums were rewritten. Xi Jinping thought was introduced into classrooms nationwide, from primary school to university. Students were not just learning history, they were learning loyalty. In the digital age, control of information is power. Xi tightened censorship, expanded surveillance, and turned the internet into a tool of state discipline. A flood of patriotic content, often state-produced, fills screens. Algorithms amplify party-approved narratives, and the digital space becomes a curated extension of political ideology. Under Xi, nationalism has become a defining feature of modern Chinese identity. The message is clear: China is rising, and the West is in decline. At the center of it all is Xi Jinping thought, a fusion of Marxism, nationalism, and authoritarian control. It paints China's mission in civilizational terms: to restore national greatness, defend sovereignty, and ensure loyalty. What Xi has built is more than a policy regime. It's an ideological machine, tightly controlled, highly ambitious, and centered around the party's absolute authority. What does Xi's vision of China mean for the rest of the world? In the next chapter, we explore the international ambitions of a country and a leader who believes the future belongs to them. Xi Jinping doesn't just want to transform China, he wants to reshape the global order. Under his leadership, China has stepped onto the world stage, not just as a participant, but as a contender for dominance. Launched in 2013, the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, was Xi's signature foreign policy project. Framed as an effort to build global connectivity, it is in reality something far more ambitious. Over 140 countries have signed on, but the initiative has drawn criticism. Allegations of debt-trap diplomacy, environmental damage, and corruption have tarnished its image. As China's influence expanded, so did friction, especially with the United States. What began as economic competition escalated into a global rivalry. Xi has pushed back hard against what he sees as Western containment. He's courted allies like Russia, brokered deals in the Middle East, and aggressively asserted China's sovereignty, especially over Taiwan. China's military, once outdated and defensive, is now modern, ambitious, and global. Under Xi, the People's Liberation Army has undergone its most sweeping reform in decades. China now has the world's largest navy. It's developing hypersonic weapons, expanding its cyber warfare units, and building overseas bases. The most dangerous flashpoint remains Taiwan. Xi has vowed reunification, by force if necessary, and every military move suggests he means it. Xi Jinping often speaks of a community with a shared future for mankind. Behind the slogan is a clear vision, a world no longer dominated by the West, but one where China sets the tone. To Xi, global influence is not just a bonus, it's a necessity. A strong China at home must be a respected and feared power abroad. Xi Jinping's foreign policy has fundamentally reshaped geopolitics. Allies have been made, rivals have hardened. The world is no longer unipolar, and Xi's China is the reason why. Xi Jinping has reshaped China's government, economy, military, and global posture. But what happens next? What are the consequences, at home and abroad, of placing one man at the center of a nation this powerful? Xi's transformation of China has brought order, growth, and national pride. But beneath the surface lie serious challenges: economic slowdowns, demographic crises, and growing discontent. The property sector, long a pillar of China's economy, is teetering. Massive real estate firms have defaulted. Families fear losing their life savings. The old engine of prosperity is sputtering. Censorship is tightening. Surveillance is expanding. And among younger generations, there's growing unease, a feeling of being locked into a future without choice. Xi's China is no longer just a rising power, it's a rival to the West. This has ushered in a new era of competition, mistrust, and geopolitical realignment. From semiconductors to sea lanes, the US-China rivalry is shaping the very fabric of globalization. Countries are being forced to choose sides, or at least hedge their bets. Meanwhile, China is still building its influence through soft power, but with mixed results. In some regions, it's welcomed. In others, feared. In 2018, Xi Jinping eliminated presidential term limits, effectively allowing himself to rule for life. It was a watershed moment. China moved from collective leadership to personalist rule. Xi has surrounded himself with loyalists, not potential heirs. There is no clear successor, and that's by design. The risk? A power vacuum when he eventually departs. And beneath the surface, cracks are forming. While public criticism is rare and risky, quiet dissent is growing. Online, in whispers, in satire. Xi Jinping has defined a new era in China, with bold ambition and iron control. He is praised as a national savior and criticized as an authoritarian hardliner. Both may be true. He was shaped by hardship during the Cultural Revolution, rose carefully through party ranks, consolidated power through anti-corruption and loyalty, redefined China's economy, its military, and its message to the world. Inside China, Xi has brought pride and order, but also fear and control. Outside, he's challenged the US-led global order, creating both opportunity and anxiety. But major questions remain. Can China's economy adapt to new realities? Will the party outlive Xi? Can a system built around one man endure? This has been the story of Xi Jinping, a leader who rose from the shadows of history to cast a long shadow of his own. His journey continues, and so does ours in understanding it.